Hey Channel Insiders, I'm your host Katie Bavoso, and welcome back for part 2 of my interview with Michael Pompey, CIO and CTO of the Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania. If you haven't watched or listened to part 1, be sure to head to channelinsider.com right now to catch up. In this half of the interview, Michael tells me more about how channel partners help support the Girl Scouts mission, and what he specifically looks for in a new third-party solution provider that tells him it's a good fit for his needs. I also wanted to ask about legacy tools and legacy people. I imagine when it comes to an organization like this, you've got people that have been a part of it for decades. If you can be a Girl Scout for decades, you can work for them for decades. I guarantee it.
And we have, and we do. We definitely do. So I can say for my council, because one thing to keep in mind is that, of the 110 councils or so, each one is different. So I happen to be lucky enough to work for a council that's large enough to, need a CIO, but deploy some pretty good technology. So we're one of the top 10 councils in the United States. For us, we don't see a lot of legacy tech. So they are very good. We're 100% cloud organization. We've got all of the appropriate systems and resources that you would expect of an enterprise. And it's interesting in that while we have folks that have worked with us for a number of years, some even for decades, like you mentioned, they're almost ambassadors, almost the wise sage versus their counterparts in, let's say, a city government, which you would definitely say our legacy. These are individuals that have seen the movement move through a variety of changes and a variety of different offerings. And that perspective is valuable because they can communicate well with our communities and our volunteers. Now, challenges that we may have related to adopting the latest tech and adopting the latest practices, definitely that shows up. That train is never late. When different SSOs and MFA, technologies are applied, you may have to have the conversation to say, hey, why this clamshell phone is not going to work anymore. Let's move you over to something that could do this. Or, hey, can it just call me? It's like, well, if this is more than just a phone call now, this is really about, authenticating and explaining that. But like with anything, it's communication, understanding, getting folks to walk in the same direction with you. And if people feel that you understand their world and that this is not about trying to catch someone, they generally walk in the direction that you need them to walk. Maybe not as fast as you want, right? Things might take a little bit slower because you are dealing with a large volunteer base, but you don't have outright rebellion that you may have in other institutions.
You talk about that challenge implementing new technology. Are you going through anything like that at the moment? Is there currently a mission to implement new technology? AI is on the tip of my tongue, as it always is these days. Is that something you're playing with?
So it's interesting too, right? Because, I have never seen such a hype train in my career as I'm seeing in the past couple of years with AI. It is just amazing. Even though some of these technologies have been around for 40 plus years, right now this hype train is moving. So we are deploying various tools, as any enterprise is going to be doing, as you try to take advantage of just what's out there to make you do your job better or just differentiate yourself in the market. When it comes to organizations that promote youth leadership, various outdoor activities, things like that, there are a lot of organizations in our space. So how do we make sure we're using the right technology to get in touch with our families and our girls differently? So for us, we are taking a cautious step as it relates to AI and automation, trying to separate what is hype versus what will really differentiate the experience for our families and our girls. So it's the usual things that you would expect, right? Are there ways to automate things that are mundane? Are there ways to start taking a look at using data models to perhaps identify trends via machine learning in our data related to service or girls that may be in danger of dropping out, things of that nature? Are there communities where we could do a better job of doing outreach on the ground to combat some of these challenges? What are the tools that AI machine learning can help with us? Now, we also talked about security. We talked about 1,300 acres of camps. And unfortunately, we live in a world where physical security is a reasonable thing to be thinking about. We do know of visual recognition built into cameras to identify the difference between a staff person, a stranger, a bear that may be on site on a property. So taking a look at taking a look at certain systems to maybe do that, to send an alert to the ranger on site. Hey, this has been detected. Such and such has been detected. So we've taken a look at some pilot platforms in this area But again, moving very slowly, probably see data, AI, and automation be the first things we try to leverage, just moving information from our systems around a little bit better.
And that is incredible because, again, talking about the Girl Scouts, we don't think about this technology. So to hear it firsthand is really impressive to think about. Going from there and thinking about how your channel partners continue to help you, I want to know something I feel really silly for not asking other CIOs in the past was, how do you find them? That's something that I think is actually very critical for the channel to know. When a provider approaches you or you approach them, how does that relationship start? Is it legacy from other businesses you've been with? Is it LinkedIn? Talk to me about how that relationship forms and how can it be better? How can they do a better job reaching out to you?
Sure. It's interesting. When you first said that, part of my brain was like, shh, don't tell her. Now they're all going to run to that place. Don't tell her. They're all going to find out. But seriously, so how do you find a good partner? For me, it is about word of mouth through my network.
Mm-hmm.
Who are folks that I trust? Who have they used and who's partnered well? That's usually the first place I start. So if I've got a particularly emergent need, I'm going to reach my network first and say, hey, has anyone done such and such? Who have you used? Who would you recommend? Who should I steer clear of? That's usually where I start first. And I'm sure channel partners, I'm sure these service providers, they know everybody's hitting at us, right? Everyone's sending us emails, they're reaching out on LinkedIn, they're having conversations. And for me, the second place is who's willing to talk versus try to sell immediately. Who's willing to understand? Because when you're developing these systems and solutions, at the same time, you are developing a relationship. And that's the thing that I carry from one organization to the next. So if I'm in one particular organization, and maybe this organization is a heavy development, so you're needing software teams, you're needing devs, you're needing DBAs and things of that nature. So you're putting together custom application. But the relationship I have with that vendor, I will take them to my next place. And depending on what's there, I will reach back to say, hey, here's a good person to speak to. Here's a good partner. So for me, if you're wanting to find, particularly in the mid-market, because everybody loves the mid-market, everybody wants to come in here, it's going to be the conversation and a relationship you build first, because this is a long-term thing. And the original scope, like any CIO, you're going to test the water. So you're not going to go guns blazing for huge initiatives right off the bat with someone brand new. But when you start, I would say to the providers, don't look at just that, because if that goes well, it is a relationship. And then everything else that comes via the speed of trust, because you've already put in that time to understand that.
So what stands out to you upon that initial meeting? They come with great accolades. They come with great recommendations from your network. But for you, upon that first touch meeting, how do you know it's going to work?
The question that they ask me. It literally, what questions do you ask me? It tells me whether or not you've thought, tells me that you've got research, tells me that whether or not you've got perspective that I might not have. So literally, it is the questions you ask. Because back in the day, pre-COVID, whenever you sat with a vendor, the first, they bring their dog and pony show, the glossy materials, all the things. I'd flip through as quick as I passed to the back, rip out the back page, because that was always where the prices was, stick it on the front and say, let's talk. Now in this sort of remote thing, you're held a little bit at hostage. But one of the things that I love to do is at the end of the conversation, ask them, what was the most useful thing we talked about today? And depending on that answer, you'll get a lot of insight on how much attention and focus was given to what you were talking about.
That, surprisingly, is not something I've heard before. And it's brilliant. It is a really good exercise. I would love to know, do you have any advice for the channel partners out there, the solution providers who are watching this and trying to learn and trying to get better? Is there anything that they could immediately adopt into their process to win business from somebody like you?
That's an interesting question, because I've spoken to a number of different channel providers over the years about different things, whether it's telecom, UCAS, right, MSP, the whole gang. And I think back to the ones that stood out were the ones that talked to me versus talking about their offerings. Ones that I felt that, hey, if I had a question outside their portfolio, they would give me the right answer, even if it meant going to someplace else. And I think in order for that to happen, you really have to understand who you're talking to and what they're doing and what their needs are. And that takes time. That's not necessarily a scoping call. That's not something you're going to turn around within a couple of weeks. That may take time. And it's not just, oh, hey, we're having this event, come out and get some drinks, or hey, let's go grab a lunch. It may be a phone call. It may be an email. It may be, hey, I was thinking about this. How does this affect you guys? And I think that would be one of the things I would tell someone to adopt. And listen, I get it. It's a slower track. It takes time to do. But at the end of the day, you can't race to the bottom for everything, right? AI is showing us that the ability to do things quick and fast is going to probably become less and less impactful as everyone can do it. How do you differentiate yourself? How do you provide something that's valuable and a human connection? That's what's going to be the thing that sells. And that is going to be the thing that takes time. Heck, it's the thing that makes us human. It makes us who we are. And I would tell providers, engage in that. Show up with that. Show that you care, show that you understand, and then see what happens. That'd be my recommendation.
Very well put. I heard somebody say recently that AI is not taking jobs. It's the people who know how to use AI that will take jobs. And I think those people still know how to be a human being. And I think that's the most important thing that is getting lost in the conversation around technology, is that we're still people.
Definitely. It's so interesting too, because someone was telling me about that. It's not, AI that's going to do it. It's someone that uses AI, and I thought back to all the different times in my career where there was a promise of technology that was going to bring innovation, speed, productivity enhancements. So whether it, was the web or mobile or cloud or all these various things that would show up in a USA magazine that my CEO would read and say, hey, Mike, how can I get some of these clouds? Do we need to get some clouds up in here? Whatever the technology that was promised to people that was supposed to change the world, we're still here in the world. We still have some of the same challenges, right? Those things didn't necessarily disappear. What are we going to do in between the gaps that I think is the most important piece? And that's the piece that I think is going to become more valuable in this new age that we're being dragged kicking and screaming by these technology platforms and vendors, is how do you hold on to that piece and make sure folks know that you have it? That's what's going to make the connection to your customer.
Are there any vendors out there right now and solutions that have been implemented into your stack that you go, this is what I'm talking about. This is the stuff that's working for me?
So one of the things that I will say, and I tell this to any tech leader that's in a nonprofit space, if you're in a nonprofit space, you really need to leverage your Microsoft partnership. The tools that are available and the pricing for a nonprofit, it is hard to argue anywhere else. Now, if you are sophisticated enough to have outgrown some of those things, well, then you already know the answers. You already have the teacher's edition. There's nothing for me to tell you there. I do believe, though, those folks that are leveraging their Microsoft environments, 365, as well as integrating your telephone providers, I've seen some great things from Call Tower. I've seen some great things, from some of the other providers out there that I've personally experienced. So while I may not necessarily be using them here in my current environment, Call Tower is one that jumps out to me as a great provider that I've used in past. I definitely recommend to folks if they really want to take a look at leveraging the Teams piece as well as the phone calling solution. Another one I've used and have recommended was Granite. They were really good as far as telecom. They took their time to explain to me in a previous environment how POTS lines and SIP trunking and all this kind of stuff works and tied together. And it felt like, hey, I wasn't just getting a pitch from someone trying to sell me something, someone that really understood what I need, understood my challenges related to a call center, and brought me a solution that worked well. So those are two. They're safe. I shouldn't hurt anybody's feelings throwing them out there. They were years ago, so no one should feel bad. So those are two folks I would definitely throw out there to definitely take a look at.
I should also ask, is there a success story with one of your channel providers that you think back to that you can say, this is when the rubber met the road and they were able to support you?
Oh, wow. So yes, there were. They're definitely over my career. So I remember a partner that I was using in a previous organization help us develop some custom software, basically built-in ERP for youth workforce. And there was one weekend, remember, where I was having the conversation about just staying in touch, talking, not necessarily related to a project or a scope, but just seeing how things were doing. And we got together and we just started bouncing ideas. What if? And I made the statement, what if I could take the same tech that UPS uses and use it to deploy workforce jobs for kids, which led to a conversation that someone said, I know somebody at UPS. You want me to get them on a phone? I was like, let's go do it. We did it. And then within a weekend, this is just, granted, kids were younger and all these different kind of things, but in a weekend, we had a proof of concept that I was able to take to my executive team at the time and say, hey, I think we've got something that can really help differentiate us in the marketplace. What do you guys think? And those guys turned around and we worked on it over the Christmas break, right? Everyone just putting their time, giving up their vacation to put this thing together in 2 weeks. And I'll never forget when we turned it on and that folks were really worried about it working. Not only did it worked very well. You start seeing the numbers just go up, 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 up. And I was like, wow, this is a rubber meets the road. This is the power of a partnership. This is the power of having someone that's got the inside out, and I'm never looking back. So I definitely remember that.
Thank you for sharing that with me. And it's always so exciting to hear about the different ways that channel partners are able to not only work well with the people they serve, but impress you, especially somebody like you that has seen it all by this point. So I'm glad that that's still something that can be done.
A lot of it. I haven't seen it all. I've seen a good bit of it, but I haven't seen it all yet. Definitely.
Michael, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you, and I am so grateful once again for your time. If we would like to support Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania, what can we do?
So if you would love to support Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania, well, you could go to our website, of course, gsep.org. You could drive to our footprint and buy all the cookies and everything that we have. But I would say support the Girl Scouts in your own council as well. Go to the Girl Scouts webpage, sign up to be a volunteer, sign up to be a member, to donate. The world in which we live now is being beset by all types of challenges for our youth's attention. We can see what social media does. We know the fears that generative AI may be able to produce as it relates to things and disinformation, stuff like that. Getting our young people away from dangerous technology and environments where they're working with other children outdoors or in the real world in their community is going to be so important versus the vitriol that we sometimes see on screens. So get out, support the organization, and let's help us help our youth going forward.
I'll sign off with my troop symbol, and thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it,
You are
Michael.
welcome. Thank you.
Thanks again to Michael for joining me, and thank you for watching or listening. You can check out all episodes of Channel Insider Partner POV on channelinsider.com or watch on our YouTube page at channelinsider_news and trends. You can also listen to every episode as a podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow wherever possible so you never miss an episode. Come connect with Channel Insider on LinkedIn or X at Channel Insider, or with me at Katie Bavoso. Once again, I'm your host, Katie Bavoso, and I'll see you next time.